It's the final days of February 2019 in the Spanish city of Barcelona. Hidden amongst the booths of Mobile World Congress, a tech expo, is what I believe to be the first, and perhaps only piece, of Spider-Man VR Lost Media. Not only was this Lost game officially licensed by Marvel, it was multiplayer, and it never, not once after its demonstration, saw the light of day again. Until today. Because through careful data mining, I rediscovered it. And turns out what we've seen of the game is merely the tip of a revelatory iceberg. My name is Spider Terrain, and this is how I found a lost Spider-Man VR game. This story is truly a rabbit hole, and an almost inaccessible one at that. Since it was never released publicly, the only footage we have of the lost game is that recorded by Mobile World Congress press, some of whom can't even stage their shots without obstructing the thing they're talking about. But from what can be seen, we can deduce the game is a different version of Far From Home VR, hence me mentioning it in the beginning. From here on out, we'll refer to it as the Lost Far From Home VR, and the version we got as retail, since with closer inspection, the two versions are completely and utterly different. Because in retail Far From Home VR, you're set free to swing around Manhattan, a lauded feature upon its release. But in the Lost version, only a single mode was included: racing. This is where the game's multiplayer functionality came in. According to my research, this whole thing was essentially a techie proof of concept for a high-speed 5G connection developed by Intel and Nokia. The connection apparently allowed for zero latency multiplayer interaction between players stationed at Intel and Nokia's demonstration booths. While attendees waited for an opponent, they'd swing around this subway tunnel looking map that spawned holographic obstacles to dodge. The game proved to be a hit at the expo, so matches were quickly found. With that, the two players would spawn on what appears to be Avengers Tower. The race began upon jumping off said tower and into the city. Watching through this footage, I noticed how much better Lost Far From Home VR looks compared to its retail counterpart. I imagine this was because the city environment was smaller and thus easier to optimize. With that discovery though, I'd exhausted all footage of the game that exists, at least to my knowledge. But it turns out that's not where this story ends. Forgive me for the tangent, but there's one thing you gotta know about me. I'm a massive Half-Life fan, and I've been keeping up with the recent leaks pertaining to a new game in the series. The funny thing about these leaks though, is that they're often accidentally left, inaccessible by the average person, within retail releases. With a keen eye, juicy tidbits of information can be data mined and discovered. And that got me thinking, what if this entire time, the lost multiplayer version of Far From Home VR was sitting right under our noses? What if it sits away from the public eye, hidden in the files of the retail version? If I were to have an answer, I knew I had to do some data mining of my own, using my copy of Far From Home VR, and so that's exactly what I did. Not only were my suspicions correct, they led me to uncover a trove of content cut from Far From Home VR, beyond the scope of anything I was expecting. Now, I don't know anything about programming, aside from making some Scratch games when I was 12. So my understanding of the code scripts I unearthed is limited to what ChatGPT and people on Reddit could tell me. But according to them, the entire racing mode is still in the game. You can see these textures I found match exactly what's in the Mobile World Congress footage. I managed to track down the flagpole model seen in the city environment and confirmation of Avengers Tower being the starting area. I even found the animations used for other Spider-Men that you'd never see in the retail game. From what I can gather, the racing mode appears to be fully playable, complete with logic that tracks players, summons obstacles, and so on. So why can't you access it in retail Far From Home VR? Well, my theory is that the same ultra-fast 5G network that facilitated multiplayer at Mobile World Congress made it impossible for the average player. And even if it were included as is, a single-player race is just a time trial, which retail already has in droves. My next discovery, however, wasn't so conclusive. I dug up what appears to be an entire cut level, taking place in a sewer environment. These assets show us what this cut level might have looked like. The giant pipes, walls, and wires reminds me a little of the storm drain mission in Mirror's Edge. Imagine swinging and parkouring around a place like this. It would have been a perfect subterraneous complement to the city above. Plus, a set of scripts suggests it would have been far more than a change of scenery. It would have been a multi-segmented challenge, with balance, stealth, and parkour segments. ChatGPT tells me the stealth section would have had you avoiding drone scanners and webbing objects around you to distract them. The parkour section seems pretty self-explanatory. The balance segment though I could pass less about. But the name evokes that sewer scene from TASM 1, where Peter makes a web in a storm drain while tracking down the lizard. Finally, at the end of the level, we might have been tasked with turning the power off to something. These electrical interfaces seem to imply so. With the free roam city, a more linear segment would have been an entertaining addition, but my final discovery was more nebulous, and definitely not what I was expecting. Flicking through folders, I came across one titled Game Modes, and inside, there it was. Spider-Verse Game Mode. Immediately, my mind sped with possibilities. It didn't make sense that Sony would promote Into the Spider-Verse within Far From Home VR. It was half a year old by that point, and it would run counter to promoting the movie the game is literally named after. It couldn't have been anything to do with No Way Home or Across the Spider-Verse, both of which were unthought of at this point in time, so what the hell was this? The script attached to the game mode unfortunately doesn't tell us much. This person commented on a Reddit thread I posted about it, stating it's merely an empty game mode. The only hint towards its true nature is the designation of a pawn, aka the thing the player controls. This was set to VR Spectator, suggesting the mode might have been akin to an interactive cutscene. My guess is that it could well have been a reference to Into the Spider-Verse, not unlike how Spider-Man 2 has an Easter egg related to the second film. Maybe it was just a little scene where Miles, Peter and Gwen drop in to say hello. Or maybe it was something far more, something like the cancelled Spider-Man The Great Web. I don't know, I unfortunately don't have all the answers. If you enjoyed this video, you can help me out by hitting the subscribe button.